Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Latina Success. Today, I have the floor with amazing ladies, Elizabeth from Spain, Marwa from San Francisco, and our special guest, Katarina, who is from Phoenix, Arizona right now. Thank you so much for all of you being here. And today, the topic is about what is RevOps. And I want to give a little background about Katarina, which she and I were able to work together before. So I know she is the expert for this topic. And I'm really looking forward to hear from her because, when I joined the team and I started working with her, I understand more the value of this. I would say it's not just about position, this culture, right? How it really helps with growing a company, growing a startup. And definitely the work that Katarina was doing was amazing. So welcome, Katarina. And I think everybody wants to hear more from you and who you are and so on. So the floor is for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I am very excited to speak to everyone today. So thanks for putting this together. This is actually my first video podcast. So also apologies if there's any skills I should learn there. But as Jessica mentioned, we met at format at a robotic software company before this. And I've worked in startups pretty much my entire career. There's been a couple journeys over to the corporate side where I quickly realized that's not for me. I really love working in spaces with limited resources. I love the kind of intensity and creativity that generates. So that kind of area is really where I gravitated towards, and I've stuck with startups. And I found RevOps in kind of a funny way. I worked in sales, I worked in customer success, and I worked in marketing, and couldn't quite find my right place in any of those departments. But what I loved is actually working in between the departments to make things run more efficiently, to find bottlenecks, to report on new initiatives and experiments that we did. And when I found the term RevOps just about 2 years ago, it's kind of a new term. I think it enveloped all of this perfectly. It's really about creating and optimizing systems, and that's what I do every day in my own life. Why make my coffee in 5 minutes if I can do it in 4? Why make a subpar cup of coffee if I can make an amazing cup of coffee and build a system around it? So I'm always thinking this way. This is kind of my predisposition, and I found RevOps, and it just feels perfect for me. It feels like it aligns with my values and my strengths. I also think RevOps is huge on accountability, and that's my top value. Is really owning what I'm doing and owning a problem. More importantly, tackling a problem, not the people surrounding the problem. It's always tackling the problem itself for the better business. And that kind of mindset really, really aligns well with me. So that's why I started a company in RevOps, and that's why I'm loving it.
So Katarina, from my experience, that when any company decides to even just tackle the revenue operations part of it, there's a reason behind it, right? There's a story, there's a need. I'm wondering, what was that like for you when you first started, like the first time you had to provide, or you decided to get into that world? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And you're right, RevOps. I think that's also why every person that you ask will have a different definition of RevOps, is because it looks very different based on what stage of company you're at. And it shouldn't. You don't need a fully fledged CRM system and dashboard 2 months into your business. You just need some spreadsheets, maybe the right rate CRM. But the reason I like this question so much is because RevOps allows you to meet the problem where it's at. And more importantly, in a startup world, you can only meet the problem with the resources that you have. And RevOps really encourages you to look at the entire problem. Even if, let's say, your sales department comes to you with a problem, RevOps isn't just going to talk to sales about that problem. They're going to talk to every single team member that has an influence on the problem, that sees it 3 steps before and 3 steps after, because you never know where a bottleneck is happening. So I think the reason that RevOps really attracted me, and that concept of the problem is going to look different for every single RevOps employee. I think that I'm suited for that because I think in systems. And so every single problem, if you just view it from a system perspective, that completely opens up the issue for you. A well-stated problem solves about half of it. A well-stated problem, frankly, is 50% of the solution, right? Because usually if you know where it's coming from, that's half the problem, right? Then you just got to start tackling it and start experimenting to fix it, maybe even remove a step as opposed to alter a step. But that's kind of how I think about it. It's all one big web, and you just have to find the string to pull to make it neat again.
What kind of questions were you able to answer? Because I think that revenue ops, not every company has it. So I think it's important for the people listening to try to put some context behind it. Like what kind of questions are, companies that do have a RevOps, a revenue ops team or person or emphasis or focus, what kind of questions can they answer so that other people can understand, like, like a more, day-to-day tangible aspect that they can learn from?
Totally. Yeah. And I think RevOps is focused on systematizing existing work as well as providing a bridge for your revenue data to make better business decisions. So revenue ops could answer questions from, hey, how did this product launch do compared to Y product launch last year? You can ask the question as broad as that to your RevOps team. And the reason you can ask that to a RevOps team versus a sales ops team, because your sales ops team is going to talk to you about what sales did for that launch that was different than last year. But RevOps is going to tell you, this is how the business as a whole looked in this product launch compared to last product launch. And we're going to pull out the details that are most important to you. So if the marketing input and output was about the same, we're not going to talk about that. If the sales input and output was about the same, we're not going to talk about that. We're specifically going to point out results and then answer the why before you even ask it, because that's what makes us excited, is seeing the data. You see the increase. Almost no RevOps professional I know is just going to show you the increase. They're gonna dive into what caused that increase, and that's where the power of RevOps is RevOps can genuinely answer the question of, why is this result the way it is? What did we do differently to get Y instead of X this time? And RevOps can answer in trends and patterns as opposed to anecdotal evidence. So you can really build on these functions. You can make a new scalable procedure. RevOps is not going to help you drive alignment and make your departments like no longer siloed, for example, though. That's still a leadership functionality RevOps can do. We can encourage people to follow just the one KPI until the sun comes home. But ultimately, if a leader comes into a meeting and asks for, okay, but what's our conversion rate or what's our number of meetings booked? We can't do anything to drive alignment at that point, right? We can just provide the data and the KPIs. But ultimately, I think RevOps is that bridge to use your financial data to make better business decisions. So almost any decision where data would give you a better strategy, just go to your RevOps person. If you're experiencing a bottleneck and you don't know where it is, go to your RevOps person. If you had a big win and you don't know why, go to your RevOps person. Any questions where you see something happening and you cannot explain it, perfect situation for a RevOps. Yeah, I love that question. Great question, because it is so out there.
Yeah, and I would have to say, I remember working with Katarina where we have to, like you say, write the story, right? What it was coming, from the lead generation, what was really turning into sales. And then, of course, with customer success, making the history match, right? What is really this customer journey, right? When they started, what was the pain point that they are coming, why they're turning to customer, why they turn into a success story, and how that data can be used to try to replicate, right? Or to try to say this is a failure for the product market fit or for the customer fit, because the story was wrong from the beginning. And like Katarina was saying, lot of companies doesn't understand that value, and it's not just about collecting data or just about making process more seamlessly, but it's also try to understand the story of why your customers are here. And I feel that a lot of companies, I have been working also in the startup world, they don't know why, right? They don't understand how they ended up with 10 customers, right? Or why these other 20 joined in the last month and why these other 10 churn, right? And talking as a customer success, churning also a lot of times get the blame in customer success, right? Oh, you didn't do your job and blah, blah, blah. Because we don't have this story to understand that there was wrong from the beginning, right? That the way we generate that lead and that sales was wrong, was a miscommunication in what was really a good customer. So yes, the customer churn, but it was not necessarily only one department's fault, right? So RevOps bring that story and say, this data show us that reason why exactly it churned. And it could be also sometimes even from product team. So well, I'm really I love this topic because with Katarina, she has been always able to oversee, I would say as a 360, right? As a whole company, what really means revenue. And it's not just focusing on one department or one specific dashboard of data. So that's very interesting. Katarina, what do you think it is the biggest challenge, when you go with a new customer and say, you need to have RevOps, right? What do you think is the first barrier you have to go there?
I think the biggest barrier that I have is when people already have an idea of when people have already selected their solution without fully understanding their problem. I think that's the toughest thing to come against when people ask me. A very simple example would be I recently had someone come to me asking me to help them 10x their pipeline. And I had to take a step back because at first, I get excited. I want to solve. Sure, let's figure this out. Let's see what you're already doing. And let's, again, systematize what works and let's experiment to find more growth. But I had to remind myself to take a step back and ask him, why do you want to 10x pipeline? And once you ask that kind of uncomfortable conversation or that question, you find that actually what he's looking for is ARR. Of course, it's always an ARR, but they have already prescribed the solution. And then they're looking for someone to implement that solution. And I think that's the toughest thing because, again, a well-phrased question is already half of your solution. So in this case, I didn't even know the question yet if I hadn't taken a step back and really asked, what is it that you're looking for? And I find this all the time, I'd say since I've started working, is that I speak with leaders that already have an idea for how they want to get there. And they don't realize, to Jessica's point here, that there are so many different ways to get to where you want to go. And investing in just one solution likely won't bring you the results that a multi-pronged approach could take, or an automatically running approach could take with an experimental approach. There's so many different ways to get where you want to go. And I think working with leaders that are open to solutions and are really aware of their problem, that's like the best relationship that I can have. And that starts off a little bit smoother. Just like with any other process, there's always discovery to be done. So I think it's just remembering to stay in discovery as long as possible to make sure that we're solving the right problem. Because just like we all know here, to get to ARR, you could 10x your pipeline, you could increase your conversion, you could also build systematic wins that your top of funnel team is not the only one carrying the goal. You could go into a new field, you could bring your CS team for upsells and cross sells. There's so many different ways that we could get to that solution of more ARR other than 10x pipeline. So I think that's the biggest hurdle that I usually need to cross.
Yeah. Can I ask, it seems like there are many moving parts and many departments involved. What system do you use? I know you mentioned spreadsheets, but is there something that is, I don't know, maybe more techy that is like magic?
Man, I wish. No, we like so I'm definitely pretty system agnostic, I'll be honest, because I feel like most tech tools out there today, most customer relationship management portals are self-explanatory. They have grown to where they are today. They've had decades to build up and build their own tutorials and their own videos. So I think that if a startup that I'm working with already has a CRM in place that's working well, they appreciate the price point, they appreciate the technology that it offers, then I prefer to just develop what they're already using. I have customers now that work in Apollo, HubSpot, and Salesforce. And I can tell you that each one has benefits, depending on what you're looking for. You do also offer the tech stack audit, which I think startups should always be doing this on an annual basis. And unfortunately, this does also fall to RevOps a lot. But there should be a systems admin in place, either on a contract basis, if it's not available full time. But there should be someone there for this, because capital is probably, one of your number one resources right next to time for a startup. And these CRMs, they cost so much money. Recording tools cost so much money. AI BDRs cost so much money. Everything costs money, and you really have to pick and choose what you need for the specific moment and not overinvest before you need it. So I would say that in phase 1, which is where you're finding product market fit, this is a time when you don't necessarily need a CRM. I think it will make your life a lot easier, but the main goal that a RevOps person needs later in phase 2 is that in phase 1, you were collecting data. All we need is data somewhere, even if that's like Gmail. Just give me access to your Gmail, and I'm going to start looking through your emails and seeing what verbiage did you use to sell this client. How many times did you talk to them? It can really come from any system. It can even be LinkedIn. It can be Sheets. I work with a lot of people in Sheets. That's where they're living in phase 1, because of course it's also collaborative. I think those are the biggest ones.
Yeah, I would say that even with my experience working with enterprise, startups that have been around for some time and even got to that enterprise or public stage, they had CRMs. And when time came to create a RevOps approach, there were even if you had a CRM, you also had data in the product analytics, you had data, and the finance team had data that maybe they were not reporting into the CRM because the CRM had been, customized to just help the sales team or the marketing team. Right. So and when RevOps would come, they would assess everything. Where is data coming into, and trying to work with each team within the organization. We would have questions. I would have questions like, how long does it take to pay CAC, like cost of acquisition per customer, like those kind of questions. There will be many, many questions that each leader from each department would have, and RevOps would try to help us understand the answers to those questions with data, but also help us understand why can we get to an answer? What would we need to track?
Yes.
Haven't tracked yet. And in a way, kind of a assessment of where's the data coming, what do we have, what can we answer with what we have, and what do we need to build, capture, or start capturing. At the point, in order to answer all these questions and maybe build something custom or extend what we have. So it wasn't never one size fits all kind of approach. It's a collaboration, it's a partnership, and it takes a while to get to that point, but it helped me a lot especially for the teams that I was leading, to get access to that data. It was very helpful, very empowering, and especially for the goals that we would create, shared goals. And the shared goals get around, obviously, business metrics. And when you usually need to have access to those business metrics, so if you have a RevOps team that is in charge of finding that information, having everyone having access to it, that was very empowering, from the individual contributor to any leader in any team. So I've always loved having access to data coming from revenue ops teams.
And I love what you said there, because you're spot on. I think that the data is there. It's just, do you have access to it? Everyone, I think maybe 20 years ago, people were worried about I need to collect data. I need more and more data. There's so much data now. Every business is collecting so much data, whether or not they realize it. Especially for those of us that work in robotics, there's so much there. It's just, how do I access it? How do I make sense of it? And that's exactly what RevOps does. And I love what you said too about, if we don't have this question answered, what do we need to answer it? Spot on. Like it's all a system. If you want to get over there, there's just these 3 steps to get there. Or frankly, you could go around this way with 4 steps, or you could go the back in 10 steps, so I love what you said there. It's really just about accessing the data.
I think one topic that before we're almost ending here, but I think it's important to talk about is also, how RevOps can help with your numbers when you're presenting to your board, right? And for BC, I think all the startups are always chasing, right, to get more funding or to be talking about we are making, sense with the business. So I think it is important to talk about this role that RevOps makes for this information.
Yeah, and you're spot on. I think that's probably one of the highest impact things that RevOps can do. And it's the most visible impact, right? So making a process better, making someone's life easier, that is personally, I love it. But you're right. The thing that founders come to me for tends to be, hey, I just got my Series A, or I just got my seed funding, and now my board wants to know what I'm doing with my funding. How are my numbers improving? Elizabeth mentioned earlier your CAC. Is it going down? No. How are these trends going? And I think that is arguably the number one thing that RevOps can do. But more importantly, I'm noticing a shift where it's being more well understood that RevOps should report to finance. Your CRM financial data should match your actual revenue data. I have, in my earlier career, again, I've seen this trend change. I've seen how the CRM at my earlier startups, which sometimes show very different numbers than I would see in my quarterly all hands, right? As a more junior rep, that's kind of your main viewpoint to how the company is doing. Meanwhile, my CRM reports show totally different numbers. And in the past 5 to 10 years, I've been noticing that this is becoming more cohesive. Our CRMs are now being held to the same standard that our accounting data is being held to. And I think that is extremely pivotal for transparency, as well as for managing these large sums of money more responsibly. I think startups that have a CRM report that's automated, that matches their accounting team, are seen as much more serious than other startups that may have wildly disparate data when you ask your CFO compared to when you ask your RevOps person. This is why when I work closely with presidents or with the financial C-suite, I usually have the best results. I feel the most confident that those reports and those facts and figures are going to be utilized the way that they should be, but also that they are correct, because you really want your ARR definition to be consistent. You want it to hold up to challenge. You don't want to have an audit when you're going for your Series B, because a lot of people are focused on getting the money, which is great, but there's also the time period after you've been told that you're getting the money. That's the part where they're going to start looking at your financial data and they're going to start spotting any discrepancies. It's going to be a little bit more of an in-depth audit, and the speed with which you receive your money can be greatly reduced if your financial data and your RevOps data matches, because at this point, you're probably speaking to your board with RevOps data. And then when they've actually given you the money, they're going to audit your financial data. So if there's massive discrepancies there, they will pause and they will ask more questions. They will want more time. And that's not what you want. You want these processes to go very quickly. And you want your board to stay confident in you. And one solid benefit of this is that your team is also going to be really aware of where you are. Your team's going to feel like you're being honest with them and like they have a real stake in the business. They'll really see that, hey, when I close customer X or when I renew customer Y or upsell, they're going to see that immediately in the revenue numbers. And that is so motivating. It's really demoralizing or demotivating when you sell something and you can't immediately see your impact. And that goes also for marketing too, right? Like I hate those win alerts where just one person gets the credit. And as Jessica said earlier, it's an entire system these days. People are so educated out there. By the time they come to the salesperson, they already know everything about the product. So it's completely right that every single thing needs to be working together, and the metrics are going to more easily align than a leader trying to touch all the components.
Yeah, it's so key for transparency, and it's a communication tool of how your business is doing. The companies that do have a revenue ops will most definitely have a way for each employee to see it, because they will present, the team will present these things on a monthly all hands meeting or whatever type of meetings they have. And that's a sign of a company that understands the value of transparency and communication, because everybody wants to know how the business that they're working for is doing. So that's a great way to do that, to boost, just morale, or just being the know. And that shows trust to your employees as well.
Totally. It shows accountability ultimately as well. The company is willing to own this number and trust their employees to own it as well. And I will say some of the most successful companies I've seen have exactly those dashboards that you're talking about, where each team has their own, of course, more custom dashboards for other metrics that they believe influences their North Star metric. But ultimately, the one thing that I do see that makes a difference is when your sales, marketing, and your customer success team, and arguably even your product team, are all driven by just one metric, and that's ARR. And then you allow your sales, your head of sales, your head of CS, your head of marketing, you allow them to work backwards to that number. And you allow them their creative freedom to meet that ARR goal, to work together. Hey, we have a joint goal of 10 million. So how is marketing going to get us there? How is CS going to get us there? How is sales going to get us there? Rather than you own 4 million, you own 2, and you own another 4. It's much, much more cohesive when the top of all of those dashboards has your one North Star metric. And that's ultimately what you're able to. Otherwise, at the end of the year, you're going to get into a meeting where someone's reporting on the number of meetings they set this month. And the last slide is that their ARR goal was actually, they didn't hit it, but they did hit a bunch of meetings, and they did do X and they did do that, but not your North Star metric, which is fine. Again, everyone needs to be accountable to their goal, but we need to be honest about what the actual goal was so that we can fix it.
Yeah. Before I hopped on the call, I was reading a report by the Pavilion and Epsta 2024. It's a business to business sales benchmark. And they were saying that RevOps is the scientific planning method of coming up with your quota. And so far, the method has been more less scientific, I want to say, but it's like the article gave an example of just flying numbers. Like, we did this last year, we hit that by the end of the year. We're supposed to hit Y in the coming year, just by kind of progression, but it's not based on numbers. And so the end result was that in 2024, 31% of SaaS sales rep did not meet their quota because it's not relevant to the microeconomics that we are having to deal in this economy, right? So I think everything you mentioned in the power of RevOps would keep from this scenario of happening, like much more accurate and attainable revenue targets.
Yeah, usually within enterprise companies, your compensation teams, you've got a lot more money at this point, so you can have quite a few different roles, and you would at this point probably have a compensation rep. And usually when someone misses quota, or an entire team misses quota by more than 10%, that's on the compensation rep. That's not on the team. That means that they didn't do something correctly. They didn't set it accurately, and it goes both ways, right? Did they Did they overshoot quota? Then same thing. We may not have considered the market well. We might be losing too much money, that sort of thing. But I think this is spot on. And it's true, not just in quota, even I see a lot of layoffs today. And ultimately, this is because resources were misallocated in the beginning. You didn't accurately check how much help do I really need? I don't need 10 employees. Maybe I just need 2. And you only hire enough until you have so much work that you can't keep up with it. And that's when you hire. You don't need to hire 100 people all at once. And yeah, I really love that perspective for RevOps. You're ultimately, in this day and age, there's no reason to make a decision on gut when there's data everywhere. I do think the only exception to this course is experimenting with a new field. Like, you're trying a new vertical, you're doing something. There's a time and a place for a hunch. Like, if I'm working with an expert in a certain field, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, of course. But ultimately, there's just no place for making big bets on hunters anymore. There's data for everything, and you need to have a reason for doing everything. And you need to know what goal you're going after before you do it. Experimentation is great, but experimentation without a goal is just wasting time. Yeah. To your point about the scientific method, I love that. That's exactly, those are 2 courses when I was younger that really resonated with me. Was when we learned the scientific method, I realized, man, I was doing that every day, all day. I'm like, what if I try this differently? What if I do this differently? And supply chain, the concept of the laziest person in the room is actually the most efficient one. I have always loved that concept. It's so true. The person that takes 2 minutes to do the task just as well as the person that takes 2 hours, I want to copy the person that took 2 minutes. I want to look at their process. So that's a really great point about the scientific method. I love that.
Thank you, Kat. Well, we have reached the end of this amazing podcast. I think your insights were amazing as always. I really love that topic. And well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, Marwa, for being here. I don't know if anything you want to add before we say bye to everybody, but if you want to add something about you, your business, how they reach out to you, anything, feel free.
Yeah, please. I own Lujic Group LLC. We are a RevOps consultancy for B2B founders that are right between 5 to 15 employees. They've just gotten their first 10 customers and are dealing with some of these problems that we talk about today. So I've helped these founders scale and grow systems for automatic scalable growth. So if people need help with that, please reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm always on there, and working on a website now, but LinkedIn has been wonderful for me. So please feel free to reach out. I always love to speak to founders, and I was raised by entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. So just a conversation about your business is always really rewarding to me, and maybe we'll find somewhere that we can work together, or we'll just kind of help each other out in the moment and part ways. But either way, I'd love to connect with any other B2B SaaS founders out there looking for some help.
Thank you, ladies. Amazing podcast. See you soon, and happy holidays.
Thanks a lot, Jessica.
Bye-bye.
Well,